We are a generation of witnesses, but we have forgotten how to see. We live in the age of the captured moment. If something happens, anything, from a car crash to a sunset, there are 1,000 lenses pointed at it, ready to upload it, filter it, and prove that it happened. We have high-definition evidence for everything. And yet, when it comes to the things that matter most, the divine, the transcendent, the miraculous, we feel like we are living in a desert of ghosts. The question is everywhere. It's whispered in hospital waiting rooms and shouted in the middle of sleepless nights. Why are there no more miracles? Where is the fire from heaven? Where is the parting of the sea? Where is the God who breaks the laws of physics to prove he is there? We look back at the stories of the Old Testament or the early church, and they feel like a different planet. Back then, it seemed like the veil between heaven and earth was paper thin. God spoke in thunder. He moved in pillars of cloud. But today, the sky is silent. The veil feels like a lead wall. And we feel cheated. We feel like we've been invited to a theatre long after the show has ended, left to stare at an empty stage and some dusty props. But we have to be honest about why we want a miracle. We don't just want a miracle to see God's glory. We want a miracle because we are hungry for a shortcut. We want a spectacle that will finally, once and for all, silence our doubts and exempt us from the agonizing, slow work of faith. We want a divine intervention that makes it impossible not to believe. We have become spiritual spectators. We want the thrill of the supernatural without the transformation of the heart. Think about the Israelites in the desert. They had the ultimate front row seat to the miraculous. They saw the plagues. They walked through a wall of water. They ate bread that fell from the sky every single morning. If miracles were enough to change a human soul, the Israelites should have been the most faithful, peaceful, and enlightened people in history. But they weren't. Within weeks, they were complaining. Within months, they were building a golden calf. The miracles didn't fix them. They just made them addicted to the next sign. They didn't fall in love with the giver. They became consumers of the gift. They were like kids at a magic show. Once the trick is over, they just want to know how the magician is going to top it next time. This is the spectator's hunger. It's the belief that if God would just do something loud enough, or bright enough, or impossible enough, our lives would finally make sense. But God is not a performer. He is not interested in entertaining our curiosity or satisfying our demand for evidence. In 2026, we have more information than any humans in history. We can explain the stars, we can map the genome, we can simulate entire universes with code. We have mastered the how of everything. And because we've mastered the mechanics, we think we are entitled to pull the lever of the divine whenever we feel like it. We treat God like an app that has stopped updating. We keep refreshing the feed, looking for a sign, and when the loading icon just keeps spinning, we assume the server is down. We assume he's gone. But maybe the silence isn't an absence. Maybe the reason the fire doesn't fall from heaven is that God is trying to move us past the show. Maybe he is tired of being a spectator sport. We look for miracles in the exceptions. The one person who was healed. The one disaster that was averted. We focus on the glitches in the system, but we ignore the system itself. We are so hungry for the water to turn into wine that we forget that the existence of water is a miracle. We are so obsessed with the idea of someone rising from the dead that we ignore the staggering, impossible fact that we are alive right now, breathing, thinking, and feeling. The hunger for a miracle is often just a mask for our fear of the mundane. We want the mountain to shake because we don't want to do the dishes. We want the voice to thunder because we don't want to listen to the whisper. We are standing in a gallery of masterpieces, complaining that the artist hasn't walked into the room and done a dance for us. Before we can find the why behind the silence, we have to repent of our hunger for the spectacle. We have to stop asking for a sign and start asking for sight. Because the tragedy of our age isn't that the miracles have stopped. The tragedy is that even if the sea split right in front of us, most of us would be too busy filming it to actually walk through. We are waiting for a show, but God is waiting for a relationship. And those two things rarely happen at the same time. There is a term in theology that feels like a cold shadow: Deus absconditus, the hidden God. It is the uncomfortable reality that God seems to have a preference for the background. We want a God who is obvious, a God who stands in the center of the town square and makes it impossible to ignore him. But the God of the burning bush is also the God who speaks from a cloud. The God of the resurrection is also the God who walked into Emmaus as a stranger, unrecognized by his own best friends. Why? Why would a God who supposedly wants to be known hide himself so effectively? Why would he leave us in this agonizing tension of maybe? To understand the silence of the miracles, we have to understand the nature of love. Love, by its very definition, requires freedom. If someone holds a gun to your head and tells you to love them, you can offer them obedience. You can offer them fear. You can even offer them a performance. But you cannot offer them love. Love is a choice that must be made in the absence of coercion. If God were to perform a massive, undeniable miracle every single day, if he wrote his name across the moon in neon letters or stepped in to stop every tragedy before it happened, he would no longer be a father. He would be a dictator of reality. He would be so overwhelmingly present that you would have no choice but to acknowledge him. Your faith would no longer be a step into a relationship. It would be an intellectual surrender to an unavoidable fact. The hiddenness of God is actually a form of divine respect. He hides so that we can have the space to seek. He stays silent so that our yes can be our own. Think about the great miracles of the past. We remember them because they are rare. We talk about the Red Sea because it only happened once. If the Red Sea split every Tuesday at 4 p.m., it wouldn't be a miracle. It would be a tourist attraction. It would be a law of nature. The miracles in the Bible were never intended to be the norm. They were signs. And the whole point of a sign is to point to something else. If you spend your whole life staring at the signpost, you never actually arrive at the destination. We are so busy wanting the sign that we have forgotten the God the sign was pointing toward. There is a terrifying possibility we have to face, that God has withdrawn the spectacular miracles because he is trying to grow us up. In the infancy of faith, God gives us the candy of the miraculous. He answers the desperate, simple prayers. He provides the obvious signs. But as a child grows, the parents step back. They don't do everything for the child anymore. They stop carrying them so the child can learn to walk. They stay in the other room so the child can learn to be brave. Maybe the silence of our age is not a sign of God's departure, but a sign of his confidence in the new thing he is doing. In the Old Testament, God was out there, in the thunder, in the fire, in the cloud. But the promise of the new covenant was that he would move in here. The miracle was no longer supposed to be something that happened to us, but something that happened through us. But here is the problem. We don't want to be the miracle. We want to watch it. It is much easier to pray for God to feed the hungry than it is to be the answer to that prayer. It is much easier to ask for a miracle of peace than it is to forgive the person who betrayed you. We are asking God to break the laws of physics because we are unwilling to break the laws of our own selfishness. We complain about the silence of God, but we are the ones who have built the walls of noise. We say, "He isn't doing anything," while we sit on our hands. We ask, "Where is the God of Elijah?" While God is asking, "Where are the people of Elijah?" The hiddenness of God is a desert we have to cross. It's a place where our motives are purified. On the mountain of miracles, everyone is a believer. But in the valley of silence, you find out who you really are. You find out if you love God for his hands, for what he can give you, or if you love him for his heart. If you feel like you are living in the silence today, if you feel like your prayers are hitting a ceiling of brass, don't assume you are being punished. And don't assume God has forgotten how to be God. Maybe he is just leaning in, waiting to see if you will keep walking when the lights go out. Maybe he is silent because he wants to hear what you have to say when there is no audience. The silence is not a void. It is a womb, and something is being formed in the dark that could never grow in the glare of a miracle. If we stop looking for God in the exceptions, we might finally start finding him in the rules. We have spent so much time staring at the sky, waiting for a crack to appear, that we have forgotten to look at the ground beneath our feet. We are like people standing in the middle of a torrential rainstorm, crying out that we are thirsty because no one has handed us a glass of water. The final reason the great miracles seem to have vanished is that we have undergone a catastrophic loss of wonder. We have deconstructed the world until there is nothing left but cold mechanics. We see a tree and we see biology. We see a birth and we see reproduction. We see a sunset and we see refraction. We have labeled everything, and in doing so, we have stripped it of its holiness. But what if the greatest miracle of all is not the suspension of the laws of nature, but the laws of nature themselves? What if the fact that the earth rotates at exactly the right speed, at exactly the right distance from a ball of burning gas, is a more profound miracle than the sun standing still for a day? What if the fact that your heart beats 100,000 times a day without you ever having to remind it is a more powerful sign than a sea parting? We are looking for the supernatural because we have grown bored with the natural. But to God, there is no difference. In the ancient stories, a miracle was a breakthrough, a moment where eternity crashed into time to show us what is possible. But in 2026, the breakthrough is meant to happen within the human heart. We keep asking why God doesn't stop the wars, why he doesn't heal the cancer, why he doesn't fix the broken systems of our world. And the whisper from the silence is always the same. I gave you the hands. I gave you the breath. I gave you the spirit of love. What are you waiting for? The most difficult miracle in the universe is not making a blind man see. It is making a selfish man kind. It is easier to turn water into wine than it is to turn hatred into forgiveness. We want the easy miracles, the ones that happen to us. But God is interested in the hard miracles, the ones that happen through us. Every time you choose to love someone who has wronged you, the veil thins. Every time you stand up for the person who has no voice, the sea parts. Every time you share your bread with the hungry, manna falls from heaven. These are the miracles of the mundane. They don't make the evening news. They don't get millions of views on a social media feed. They are quiet, they are slow, and they are costly. But they are the only miracles that actually change the texture of the world. We think we are living in a secular age, a disenchanted world where the divine has retreated. But the truth is that the world is still charged with the grandeur of God, as the poet said. It's just that we have forgotten how to pay attention. The silence of the miracles is an invitation to a deeper kind of sight. It is a call to move from being a consumer of the supernatural to being a conduit of it. If you are waiting for a sign today, if you are waiting for some undeniable proof that you are not alone in the dark, I want you to consider this. Your longing for a miracle is, in itself, a miracle. The fact that you, a collection of atoms and stardust, possess a soul that hungers for the infinite is the greatest evidence there is. A machine doesn't wonder where its maker is. A rock doesn't feel the ache of the silence. The ache is the proof. The hunger is the sign. You are not living in the aftermath of a show that ended 2,000 years ago. You are living in the middle of a story that is still being written. The God who spoke in the thunder is now speaking in your conscience. The God who healed the sick is now asking for your hands to do the same. Stop waiting for the sky to fall. Start looking at the person in front of you. Stop asking why the fire has gone out and start realizing that you were meant to be the flame. The silence is over the moment you decide to be the answer to someone else's prayer. Take a breath. Open your eyes. The miracle isn't coming. It's already here. And it's you. Peace be with you.